Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Fast Tracks webinar. In this session, we're going to be going over one of the more powerful features in the software that will save a lot of time: ordering. By the end of this session, you'll have a better idea of how to order, schedule orders, and automate this entire process. That'll save you so much of that precious time. We're going to be going over each of the different order methods and how they work. Each can be utilized for different purposes. We'll also be going over different properties of these orders and the operations are like merging them and what a working order is and how to utilize a working order. So let's begin. We will start off in Director and we will go to the Inventory module, and then we're going to go to the Reorder tab in the ribbon. This brings up where we can generate all of our orders. Now, if I'm ordering from corporate and I'm in a multi-store environment, I can generate orders for specific stores. If I'm in store mode, then by default, it's going to be my local store that I'm ordering for. Let's go over each of the methods. There are several different method types. By default, it's to list all items from vendor. What this will do is all items that have a vendor part from this vendor, your vendor selector, is going to show every single item that can be ordered from that particular vendor. Everything is going to be at a zero quantity, so you're going to have to go through and manually adjust each and every item that you want to actually order. The next method is the blank order type. Basically, this is the opposite of the previous method. It's going to generate a form. When I create this order, generate order button, it's going to generate just a completely blank order form. Then there's the MinMax. MinMax, this will basically be utilized in a single store environment, so you can't really do this in a corporate environment or a multi-store environment. Where it gets these MinMax values is going to be on the item itself. So, for example, if I pull up an item that has a vendor part, I want to set a min quantity and a max quantity. That's where those values are set, and that's the only place those are set. So the downside to this is if you're in a multi-store environment, and the reason you can't use this in a corporate or multi-store environment is anytime corporate sends this item down from corporate to the store, whatever values corporate has in place is going to override what the store has. This can't be set on a store-to-store basis. The next type we're going to look at is the replenishment. This is a more commonly used order type. The other three previous ones generally aren't used that often. So what is replenishment? Replenishment, simply put, is going to be what I sold in a specific time frame is what I'm going to order. That date range is here. I can do a from date and a to date. Then there's the roundup when subunit reaches X number %. What does that mean? Simply put, this will be used in any kind of items that have a link. So for example, a carton to pack, a can to roll. If in this scenario, I sold a carton in this time period, I'm going to order that carton. If I didn't sell a carton and I sold 4 packs instead, I'm not going to order anything. Why? That's because that percent here is set to 50. I would have to have sold 5 packs in order to order that carton. So say I move this up to 70%. That would mean I would have to sell 7 packs in order for it to round up an order to a carton. That way, if I have certain items that I want to not order, they're not a crazy good seller, and I want to order on a higher subunit percentage, I totally have the power to do that. Quantity on hand reorder point. This is used for items that have a vendor part that whenever you receive that vendor part, it is a greater than 1 quantity. So let's say, for an example, we are ordering a pack, and our vendor part is tied to the pack. And whenever we receive that vendor part, that pack quantity, whenever we receive it into inventory, is going to add 10. So let's look at how this would look in a price book. First off, there would have to be no link here. We can't have a link. We next have to have a vendor part. I can have the UPC as a vendor part. The number of units, in this case, it would be 10. And I can have my cost. So when using quantity on hand reorder point, I either set that value, it's a percentage, on the item itself in additional information. There's a quantity on hand reorder point value here, or on the department itself. So I can go to maintenance, departments. This was in the full price pack department, and the value can be set here. Remember, it's a percentage. So how does that function? The quantity on hand reorder point checkbox will supersede the replenishment value. So instead of, say I sold 5 packs and I have my subunit percentage set to 50%. If I have that box unchecked, I'm going to order a carton, one single carton. If I'm using the quantity on hand reorder point and I have, let's say, 50% set here, that means that I won't order, in this scenario, that carton. Why? Because that percentage means it's basing my order on a reorder point of my current on hand at that store. So I'm only going to order whenever I have 50% of this particular item in inventory. In this case, I have four. So that's that. This is generally used on like sticks, like a lot of cigars that you don't really want to order at giant box. They sell slowly, so you have just the individual item in place, and you have the vendor part tied to that individual stick, and the number of units is greater than 1. You can then order based on that quantity on hand reorder point, and it will order based on your current inventory. So if you have a certain percentage of that vendor part on hand, it's going to order that. Let's go back to our order form. We're going to go back to replenishment. And items min quantity, what does that mean? This means you're going to, if an item is on an order form, it's going to use that item's min quantity. Where's that value set? Well, let's open another directory so we don't have to bounce between these over and over. On the vendor part itself, there's a value, a min order quantity. By default, it's set to 0. If I have that set to, let's say, 5, whenever I order this, if it's say I'm ordering just 1, the system that can order 1, it's going to actually override that and put 5 in place, because the minimum quantity whenever I order this has to meet that threshold. So it'll put 5. Include sold items of 0 order quantity. What does this mean? This would include items, let's say that I sold 4 packs in this time period and no cartons. It doesn't meet that threshold. I didn't sell 5, so it's not going to order a carton. If this is checked, it will still throw that item on the order, and it will also put that at a 0 order quantity. So you can then manually adjust what you want to order. Now on the order forms itself, I'm going to generate one real fast. Actually, I didn't do a filter, so let's close that real fast and do it in the other window. Let's do our replenishment for those 2 days, and we're going to do just our price pack. That should be a much faster order than doing every single item. We'll review this order form and see what data is on that. So this is the order worksheet. You'll have your order quantity, which is what you're actually ordering, the vendor part, the UPC number, the description, cost, the number of units, if there's a vendor part description, and then your on hand. That first value is going to be what this row is. The second value, it would be if there's a subunit. What's the on hand of that? Then you have your 52 high, your 52 low. That's based on your sales. Is the trend up or down? And then your previous week sales. Week 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. How many of that purchasing did you sell in that week? How many of the subunit did you sell in that week? It's pretty simple. You can edit these values either in the grid itself or down here in the item details area. In the item details area, that's where you can change your cost. You'll see details such as the individual cost each and the total cost of what that would be. So let's go and let's look at our days of inventory. That is another method. What this does is this will analyze sales for a certain time period and give you an average sales of item per day for items in this filter. And then you are ordering to keep a certain number of inventory on hand. Now, how does this work? Let's do those. Let's say we don't want to do just a 1 day or 2 day period. We want to have a much larger period to analyze those sales. So I generally, as a rule of thumb, go back 2 months. I'll say the beginning of June. What this will do is the items that are in this filter, it will analyze the sales for this time period to that time period. What's my average sale per day per item in that department? If I want to keep 10 days inventory on hand, that means, for example, let's say I have an item that has an average sale day of 1. If I want to keep a 10 days inventory on hand, that means I need to have 10 on hand. There's a checkbox here to take into account current quantity on hand. That means if I have 5 on hand right now, I'm only going to order 5 to bring me up to 10 because I want to last 10 days. If I have 10 on hand now, I'm not going to order anything at all because I've already got what I need to last 10 days. If I have 0 on hand, I'm going to order 10. The item min quantity and the sold items with 0 order quantity, those are the exact same values that would be on the replenishment. So that is how the days of inventory works. Now, what if there was a way to combine both days of inventory and replenishment? Because days of inventory, that's a great method, but what about items that are new? Let's say I had a new item that was added in my price book last week, and I'm looking at those 2 months of sales history, and that item's a great seller. Well, my average sales per day of that item, if I sold all 10 that I received last week, is going to be less than 1. So it wouldn't order that item. Sure, I could see that with a include 0 order quantity, but what if I want a value generated? That is where the hybrid, this value here, basically whenever you're ordering, it will, any items that are new in the last 60 days or 30 days or whatever value you input is going to order based on replenishment. Anything older than that is going to order based on days of inventory. You can set your days of inventory values up here. Days history, I can look at the past 62 days for 2 months. How many days do I want to order? I want to keep 10 days on hand. So that's basically the same parameters as I had in my previous days of inventory ordering. These values are the same as the previous. They include today and today's day range. Basically, that would include today here. So I'd be looking at today and then the 61 previous days. If I have this unchecked, it's going to be looking at yesterday and the 61 days previous to that. That covers the methods. Now, there's other checkboxes down here too. Refresh quantity on hand before processing. You generally don't have to do this because if you're ordering from a store level, of course, you already have your on hands. If you're ordering from corporate, Exporter, the program that sends data from store to corporate, generally runs every 30 minutes to an hour. So you're going to be pretty much up to date. You can always check the last time Exporter ran by looking at the dashboard. That'll tell you the last time Exporter ran. Also, if you're running these orders, if you schedule them, which is an ideal way to do this, in the middle of the night, you're more than likely going to have up-to-date on hands in the middle of the night. So if I check that, that's basically going to reach back out to the store level, update my on hand, and then generate the order. Check for alternate vendors. That is going to check for alternative vendors, if an item in this filter meets the criteria of having a vendor part from another vendor, use order requirements. This is generally not used anymore. It was a Philip Morris Altria product requirement. The rules are set in the consistent ordering requirements. What this will do is basically, if you ordered a certain number of Marlboros this week, you had to order a percentage of that, what you ordered this week, next week. From what I've understood, that's kind of gone away. Then there's a create as transfer from store. What that will do is that will basically create a pending transfer, so you can order from another store's inventory. How that would look is if we go ahead and do that, let's do our filter. You'll get a pending transfer window. This one that will show up in the pending transfers tab in Director. There's our pending transfer. And we can send this to store 2. Store 2 can review this, send what they can back, and that would complete that process. Then if you're ordering from corporate, there's a store view not required. What does this do? What this does is whenever I generate an order, it will automatically assign it a purchase order number. So all these orders that I've done, those are assigned purchase orders. If I uncheck that, I can give that order a description. When I generate this order, it will go in the Working Orders tab. Now, what is a working order? It is an order before it gets a purchase order number. Corporate generates this order. It will then show up in the Working Orders tab in the unsent status. I can review that by double-clicking it, and it'll show basically what the suggested order quantity would be. That is what the system determines needs to be on that order based on whatever criteria you're looking at, days of inventory or replenishment. The store quantity will be what the store requests to be ordered. So to get that value, I would then send that to a store. The store then would utilize their working orders, either standalone program or utilize the action button in the point of sale to open working orders. They will then work that order. That will allow them to see what the system thinks they should order, and then if they want to put in their input on that value, they can put that in the store quantity, this value here. When they're done, they'll send that back to corporate. Corporate then would see what the suggested quantity would be, what the store quantity would be, and they can make the final number of what's going to be ordered. When they're done, they'll either complete that order to convert it to a purchase order and give it a purchase order number, or if there's multiple orders from the same vendor, you can merge, which that brings us to merging orders. The great thing about ordering is you can filter to certain groups of items and utilize those specific methods when ordering. So I can make a full price SIG order and I can order based on replenishment. I can make a days of inventory and order based on a manufacturer. I can make a hybrid order and order based on department down here. I can make a blank order and I can key in items that are just randomly keyed in. Once all those orders are keyed in and and let's say they're all from the same vendor, I can merge those together. So the vendor is only going to be getting one singular order instead of 5 or 6 individual orders. All those items on those orders are ordered based on different methods of what I determine would be the best way to order that. So the great thing about that is you can pinpoint and order specific ways for specific items, categories, manufacturers, departments to get it exactly the way you want. Merge those together, and then the vendor gets one singular order to make it all simple. So let's look at the previous orders tab. That's where everything goes whenever we complete that order and move it to a purchase order, if it's in a working order form. This is basically that reorder worksheet whenever we view that. Same data we went over earlier. I can delete an order. That will remove it. So like this order here is blank, I can delete that. I can close an order. Closing an order basically marks the status as closed. I can still print that out, send it to my vendor, but once it's closed, it will basically show that this order is closed on open item orders. What I mean by that is if we go to an item and we view that item, we can see that there's my on hand, of course. That's how many I have on order. The POS can also see this whenever you're doing a price check. I can click and see what purchase orders those items are on. So let's look at one, that very first one. I'm going to go to my inventory. I'm going to go to my reorder tab, the previous orders. There's that order. It's on there. Whenever I close that, when I go back to this item, that value changed. It's no longer on order on that purchase order anymore. 2 was removed. So this is a quick way to view what's on order and then close those out, basically updating that on order value. I can copy an order. Edit order basically is the same thing as double clicking. The merging that I talked about earlier, this is where I can merge 2 orders. Then I can print order and I can have a print guide. To the far right, I can convert orders to invoices. Now when I do this, let's say I convert this order to an invoice. I'll have an expected quantity, so I can see what I ordered compared to what the vendor actually sent me. That way I can see if I got everything that I requested. And then there's send order EDI. What this does is that will basically, if you have electronic ordering in place and you have your proper FTP site and login and folder structure in place, and your vendor is expecting this, you can press that send EDI, and that will basically send this order in electronic format, generally some kind of a text file or CSV file, directly to the vendor. The vendor then can process that electronically on their software, and then generally they will generate an electronic invoice, and then the director can electronically process that invoice by reaching out to that same FTP site in the invoices folder, grab that, process it, and then your invoice is in place. It's really a great way to save time and to have your orders and your invoices more accurate instead of manually keying those in. Now to show you what it looks like on a POS whenever we do a price check and look at that value, let me get that UPC number. Just to view the on order. And I miskeyed that. Let's do it one more time. There's that value, on order. So we can see that I close in yet another one. So that's how the POS would see. And then finally, we're going to be going over scheduling. This is the most important thing to do. Once you find the exact order format you like, and you separate those out and you're ordering different methods for different groups of items, the great thing is scheduling that, so you don't have to manually do that anymore. So let's say I'm going to do a replenishment for this past week, and I'm going to include sold items with a 0 order quantity, and I want to do my price departments for store 1, and I don't want it to be a working order. I'm going to schedule that order. I'm going to give this a name. So let's say full price store 1. I want that to run, let's say, on Sundays at 2 a.m. Then you have your offset and duration. What is this? Think of this as the days, that start date and that stop date. The offset is going to be how many days back are we going to look. So when I choose 7, I'm looking back 7 days from today. Duration, how many days forward from that date here, or are we going to look forward? I'm going to put 7 there. I want to look 7 days back and 7 days forward from that, basically a week's worth of sales. If I put 3 here, what this would do is I will look 7 days back from today, and I will go 3 days forward from that. That's what I'm going to be replenishing. So just 3 days worth of sales history. I want to do 7. Do I want to automatically send that electronic invoice or EDI file, that electronic order? If I do, I check that. If it's a working order, do I want to automatically send this to the store? Yes or no? Mergeable? Do I want to merge different orders from the same vendor? Yes or no? Do I want to use that vendor part minimum order quantity? Yes or no? And do I want to include 0 items on the order, items that were sold but may not meet the criteria? So I'm going to stick the 0 quantity. Yes or no? Then I can edit the fields. I can say I want, of course, this data is already populated, filter by department. I want to have just my full price packs. I'm going to uncheck that refresh quantity on hand before processing. That looks good. When all is said and done, I can schedule that. And then I can go through and schedule multiple orders for multiple stores, multiple filters of items, multiple vendors. When all is said and done, I can view all those here. I can see what the schedule name is, run day, the run time, and then all the data that we just input. If I want to edit that, I can, of course, click the edit button. That brings me back to the screen we were just on. I can edit those values. If I want to copy that, say I like this order for store 1, I want to copy that for store 2. I can just simply hit the copy. And then full price store 2 and schedule. And that will be for store 2. So it's a very, very valuable thing to schedule these orders. I actually didn't choose the store there. I want to edit that field and change that for store 2. So scheduling orders is ideally the end goal you should be, because you can always review the orders before you finalize them. The scheduling part just takes care of the mundane task of going through and generating an order for every single store you may have, or every single categorization of items you want to order for. It does all the work for you. Okay, well, that is what I had to cover for today. I hope everybody learned something new, and hopefully this will benefit you in a positive way and save you a lot of that precious time. I look forward to speaking with everyone next week, and I hope everyone has a great weekend and following week. Thank you.